This is a podcast about new crops. You're going to love it. Join us on The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin.
The weather conditions here are just about ideal for growing horseradish. You get into more southern regions, and a lot of the energy is going into these big, beautiful green leaves, which we actually do nothing with. We're interested in big, bulky, hardy roots. And the cold winter is actually beneficial for horseradish. We have a saying, you have to keep horseradish cold to keep it hot.
Welcome to another episode of The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin. I'm Stefan Mirsky, Outreach Specialist for Emerging Crops with UW-Madison Extension. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Eric Rygg, President of Silver Springs Foods, a subsidiary of Huntsinger Farms, the world's largest grower and processor of horseradish, located in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Similar to a recent episode about Chippewa Valley bean, we'll explore how Silver Springs broke the mold to grow a unique crop in Wisconsin and successfully scale to the point where it is today. So thanks for joining me, Eric. Let's just start by you introducing yourself in a little bit more detail and describing your role at Silver Springs.
Sure, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here. My name is Eric Rygg, and I am the president of Silver Spring Foods and Huntsinger Farms. Our claim to fame is we are the world's largest grower and processor of horseradish. Now, it's important to note that we include both growing it and processing. So we're totally vertically integrated in horseradish. Hard to say whether we're the largest grower alone or whether we're the largest processor alone, but there is no one, from our understanding, that's doing both the growing and the processing at the scale that we're doing it. So it's a safe claim that we can make.
Great. So I'm really fascinated by the history of the company, and I believe you're fourth generation. Can you just, in a nutshell, give the history of the company and why the family decided to grow horseradish of all crops?
Yeah, so it's a great story. So my great grandfather, his name is Ellis Huntsinger. He was the founder of our company. Started in 1929. So this is the end of the 20s. We're kind of getting in near the Great Depression. He was a door-to-door lightning rod salesman here in Eau Claire, and apparently, there's only so many lightning rods you can sell. You don't have a lot of repeat customers. So he ended up falling back on farming to feed his family and generate some income. And he grew, what most people were growing at the time: corn and strawberries, melons. Horseradish was also something that he decided to grow. Perhaps it was his German heritage. Huntsinger hails from Germany, and he went along with just fine with the farming. What he found though was, for most of the other crops, you'd have to harvest and sell in kind of a farmer's market situation. Whereas the horseradish, he was able to harvest in the spring and the fall and keep in cold storage and sell during the winter months. So it had an economic impact for him. It was a way to augment his income during the winter months, and that's where he really started to flourish. Another thing that happened that he discovered is in Eau Claire, where he started growing horseradish and these other crops, we're near the 45th parallel, about halfway from the equator to the North Pole. And the weather conditions here are just about ideal for growing horseradish. So that was kind of by luck. You get into more southern regions, and a lot of the energy is going into these big, beautiful green leaves, which we actually do nothing with. We're interested in big, bulky, hardy roots. And so the cold weather, the cold winter is actually beneficial for horseradish. We have a saying, you have to keep horseradish cold to keep it hot. And so the long winter is actually natural refrigeration for us. And we like to say that it kind of bulks up for the winter, those big bulky roots. So we had a natural advantage here with the great soil, with the perfect weather, and horseradish really flourished for him. And that's really how we got our start in growing a horseradish company.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we'll get into the life cycle of horseradish and how you grow it in just a few minutes. But I'm really interested in how you grew the market in the early days. Was there, I mean, I know there are a lot of German immigrants in Wisconsin. Was there just people out there who were demanding this stuff, or how did he find a place to sell this horseradish?
So very humble beginnings. He started grinding horseradish in his basement and bottling it there, and then selling it door to door. It was literally door to door. He was a door to door lightning rod salesman. So he took the model and applied it to horseradish. I think back in the days, you'd have a milkman, and in Eau Claire, you had a horseradish person too that could get you fresh horseradish. One thing to know about horseradish, it's not like wine. It doesn't get better with age. So it's the hottest the day that you grind it, and every day after that, it loses a little bit of its heat. So, having a great product and fresh, with delivery service, was one way that he was able to grow his product and gain a reputation for not just these other crops that he was growing, but also the horseradish. And from there, demand grew from Eau Claire, then to become more regional, then to become more in the state. And as the company progressed and as he gained more capacity, he was able to expand into new markets.
Okay, so yeah, so can we jump ahead and let's talk about the structure and the business model of the company today. So just where are the crops grown? What is the total acreage under production? How many growers do you contract with versus how much of the crop do you grow at the farm there? Yeah, those kinds of things.
So yeah, let me talk a little bit about historically growing horseradish that led to our current state. So it was important to learn, and this was with Ellis and then also my grandfather after him, that growing horseradish in the same field year after year is really problematic. And there's a lot of research right now on crop rotation, in the benefits of crop rotation and what can happen. Well, originally we grew horseradish in the same field because we didn't have all the acres to support a rotation at that time. So as demand grew and as he expanded into more states and became national, he needed to generate more horseradish or look at yields. And what was happening over time is his yields were actually diminishing over time, more susceptible to disease, not doing that rotation. So they changed their model and went to a 5 to 7 year crop rotation for horseradish. So not quite like ginseng in Wisconsin, where it's grown in a field once and you can never grow it in that field again. We have 5 to 7 years. It's a long rotation where we're growing corn and soybeans and oats and alfalfa, rye. We've tried a variety of different rotation crops, and it's so beneficial for nitrogen fixing and erosion protection and unlocking and developing those nutrients in the soil that the horseradish really likes. And I think a big factor was disease prevention, something called verticillium wilt that attacks potatoes, makes these brown or black rings inside the potato. It also attacks horseradish, and we want a nice white quality fleshy root without those black rings in there. So this crop rotation really helped us prevent or eliminate some of that verticillium wilt risk, which affected yield and discoloration of the horseradish. So we needed to expand our acreage to support all the horseradish that we have. Today, we're growing about 900 acres to 1,000 acres of horseradish per year. So we need about 5,000 to 7,000 acres really to support that. Where we're doing rotation. So we'll do 1 to 2,000 acres of corn. We'll do 1 to 2,000 acres of soybeans, and then we'll do that 900 acres to 1,000 acres of horseradish, so that we can be sustainable and continue to be good stewards of the land. Really focus on high quality horseradish, where we're producing on our own fields, on our own production, about 6 to 7 million pounds of horseradish per year. So it's about 5 to 6 ton to the acre is kind of what the yield is. And For a while, we were growing about 90% of what we were processing in the factory. And a couple years ago, 2018, 2019, we had a really big winter. We always play a game of chicken with the winter and the fall. The longer we wait to harvest, the bigger our yields are going to be. If we wait too long, the ground freezes or it's too wet and we can't move our harvest equipment through the fields. So when's the right time to start? Well, it came really early that year, the winter. It was a big winter, and it thawed out really late. So we ended up being about 2 million pounds short of horseradish. It was kind of a global phenomenon that year. In the past, when we've had a bad year in Wisconsin, we've been able to buy from other growers around the world. That year, unfortunately, everybody had a lot of trouble. And so it put us in a kind of a difficult spot that year where we didn't have enough horseradish to meet all of our customers' demands. So in as we're preparing and as the weather patterns are changing and they're a little more erratic and we're not exactly sure, but in the past couple of years, the weather patterns have not been all that stable, and we're concerned about it. So we've diversified. We're only growing about now 70% of what our processing needs are, and we're buying now by contract with farmers in other areas in more southern climates, just in case we have another bad year winter-wise. We're able to offset and acquire some roots from some other growers and establish those relationships. So Collinsville, Illinois is a big growing region. They serve most of our competitors. Aren't there very many of us, horseradish processors, but we have very good relations with them and long-term relationships with them. And being farmers ourselves, I think we have a little more understanding of what they're going through and how the cycle works, what their rotation looks like, and be able to share information back and forth so we can again make sure that we're getting enough horseradish to cover our customers' needs, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So you said you supply about 70% of the product that you process. Where is that grown? Where are you contracting farmers?
So we actually control the process ourselves. We are growing it on our own fields that we've acquired over the last 90 years, with equipment that we have modified. Can't go to John Deere and get a horseradish planter or a horseradish harvester. So these are our inventions of our own making, taking other models, breaking them apart, and setting them up to be useful for horseradish, and with our own farm crew. And so it's a lot of overhead to manage. And really, the purpose of Huntsinger Farms is to grow the highest quality horseradish at the lowest possible cost. And we've really looked at this model and saying, well, maybe we just focus on the horseradish part and not worry about the rotation. We can contract that out. Someone else can grow the corn and the soybeans. What I've decided is that we may lose too much control. It's really important that we are preparing the soil for horseradish. So if we are, growing corn and soybeans and other crops, and we can manage exactly what we're putting on the field, how we're managing it. Where if it's another farmer, they may not follow the same protocol, or they may not be having the same restrictions that we would because of the horseradish. And we just can't take the risk of something, being left in the soil, or taking some of that nutrient bank that we've taken so many years to develop. That's really good for horseradish. We can't risk getting that impaired. So we've decided to control the whole process so we can control the quality and really focus on that plant health and get those yields that we're looking for. And really understand, the dynamics of horseradish and what makes it hot and what are those good characteristics that we're looking for from a consumer standpoint. And managing the farm ourselves allows us to do that. And then we augment with the 30% from other farmers. Those we do contract with, primarily out of Collinsville, Illinois. And there's a variety of different farmers out down there that we work with, and they're bringing in some different varieties of horseradish. That what we are able to do is do a root blend when we get to the factory so that we have a consistent flavor coming to the consumer. So some roots are a little hotter, some are a little more bitter, some have some nice white characteristics. So what we can do, which is a little unique, is a root blend and have a consistent finished product coming out for consumers.
Interesting. Okay. Can you take us through the life cycle of horseradish? So I know it's a perennial, but how long is it actually in the ground for before you harvest it? Um,
Yeah,
and
sure.
what precedes the crop? And
Yep. So we'll start with we have to harvest our horseradish in order to generate our own seed stock. So what we do is in the fall, we will go out there with our modified potato harvester. It's a blade that goes underneath the soil. We cut the tops off the roots. We rake them to the side because we don't do anything with the leaves. The blade goes under the soil and picks up the horseradish roots under the ground and tries to knock off as much soil as possible. So we don't want to haul that back to the factory. Goes into cold storage, but before it goes into cold storage, we run it across a belt line. So a lot of labor there, looking at the horseradish, taking any foreign material out. But then they're also saving pieces of the horseradish root itself. So what we call the sets. So they're offshoots from the mother root, and we're looking for chunks of horseradish that are about 6 to 8 inches long, about as thick as your thumb, and we'll save by hand, again, running across our belt line, cutting these individual seed stock off the mother root and put them in set boxes to then go back out in the field and plant that. So then those pieces of horseradish, so kind of like a potato, it's you can cut a potato apart and plant that, and then it'll grow into a whole new potato. So no different for horseradish. You take these pieces off and plant them in the field, and then they grow into another mother root with the crown and seed stock. So it's kind of self-perpetuating. So when the horseradish goes in the ground, after we're able to save the seed stock, if we plant in the fall, then we'll generally leave it in the ground. It needs at least one winter of a nice cold winter to kind of bulk up. So generally we leave it in the ground for 12 months before it's worth harvesting to get enough bulk. We have left it in the ground up to 18 months, and it's also very high quality. We do generate a little more heat within the horseradish roots themselves when they're in the ground a little bit longer. We've left them into the ground up to 2 years, 24 months, but then the horseradish itself starts to become more susceptible to other problems. The root structure changes a little bit. It has more susceptibility to crown rot and other things from just being in the ground for that long before we're able to pull it out of the ground and put it into cold storage. So generally, I would say we try to harvest the root either that next fall or the next spring, 12 to 18 months. And we have 2 cycles. So we will have a harvest and planting cycle in the fall, and then we'll come back in the spring and do another harvest and planting cycle in the spring. And we're always fighting the weather here in Wisconsin. When is it going to freeze? When is it going to be too wet for us to harvest in the fall? And then in the spring, when is the ground thaw? We've harvested as early as the end of March. Hard to believe this year because we got quite a bit of snow on the ground still. So our average is usually middle of April, but it's been as late as May 10th. And the later it goes, then the longer we need to wait to harvest it again. So it's a pretty vicious cycle. So for us to diversify and buy that 30% from other farmers is actually strategically, diversifies our portfolio. But those roots are harvested actually in November, December, January, February, and March, the months that we can't even touch our fields, and they're able to get delivered to the factory, during the time that we're kind of shut out because of the winter here.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I know about horseradish is that once you grow it in a field, it's really difficult to get rid of because any root that you leave behind in the ground will just come right back up. So how do you actually terminate the crop? Do you not get plants that will come up after harvest?
Yeah, so that's where the rotation comes in. You're right. If you're growing horseradish in your own garden, we recommend you keep it separate from everything else because it will take it over. Grow it in a wheelbarrow or grow it in a separate area because it'll be like mint and it'll take everything over and you can't get rid of it. For commercial production, they're able to take care of it. And what they do is the crop coming in after horseradish is always corn. So the corn, you'll have some volunteer horseradish coming up, after that next year. But most of the time we try to get all the roots out of the ground, and then next year we grow corn so that when we're coming in with the combine, if there's a little horseradish leaves in the bottom, it's not too big of an issue. So the corn can kind of dominate the nutrients and grow a little bit faster and kind of smother out the horseradish that next year. So we usually do 2 seasons of corn before then we get into soybeans, and then try maybe something else, alfalfa or rye or oats, to complete the cycle before we get back into horseradish and kind of prep the soil.
Okay, yeah, you kind of touched on this, and I'm really curious to know more. Is that there's actually different varieties of horseradish, and they have different flavor profiles. Um,
Yes.
so can you just talk a little bit more about what variety do you grow, and what are the differences in the varieties out there?
Yeah, if you think of it like most agricultural crops, grapes are the most prevalent, where you have different varieties of grapes that produce different flavor wines. Well, horseradish, we have a variety of a horseradish that you can grow, and depending on where it's grown, you're going to have some different flavor dynamics. Most consumers aren't going to really be able to pick up the differences, but we've been doing this for so long that we can actually taste and qualify some different flavor characteristics. So what grows well up here, and we generally grow one variety. It's called Big Top Western, and we went through a process of trial and error with other varieties of horseradish. This is back in the Huntsinger and Bartouche days, in partnership with the University of Wisconsin. They did a lot of trials to see what was the best variety, and Big Top Western is really what they landed on. Grows well in this climate. It's got a little bit of a thicker skin. It doesn't have as much bulk as some of the other varieties, but it's got a really nice flavor and heat profile. There's almost a sweetness to the roots we grow here in Wisconsin, and I think potatoes here are also just maybe a little sweeter than potatoes that I've had grown in other areas. So that might be something with the soil. Maybe it's the variety. Um, some of the different varieties in Illinois tend to be bigger roots themselves, and they'll have a lot of heat. The heat is something they really focus on in the yield. But with the heat comes some bitterness. So when we do a root blend, we do maybe 30% of the roots from Illinois, and then we'll do 70% of the sweet root from Wisconsin. Has a nice flavor profile when we have the finished product, and it's you got that nice white hot product, but a little bit of sweetness and pleasantness, which is surprising to say for a horseradish product, but I think that unique horseradish root gives us a little bit of a differentiation compared to our competitors who don't. None of them use horseradish grown in Wisconsin because we consume all the roots that we grow here. So they're only buying from these other regions. There's a place in California, from Northern California. Their roots are really fibrous and even more bitter than the roots from Illinois. So we generally don't use those roots in our blend. In years past, if we've had shortages, we'll buy from a variety of other farmers, but generally we haven't utilized their root in quite a few years.
Interesting. Okay, so you harvest the horseradish in the fall, hopefully just before the ground starts to freeze. What happens after that? What are the post-harvesting processing techniques that you do there at the facility?
Yeah, so all of our root, wherever it's harvested from, will come back to our underground storage facility. So it gets hauled back there via dump trailer. So there's a harvester going in the field, and then along next to it, we're going to have a semi dump trailer that the horseradish roots fly into. That gets hauled back to our central underground storage. Goes across the belt line, as I mentioned before. If we're saving seed stock, we do that until we're done. Otherwise, it'll go across the belt line just to take any foreign material that the guys see before it goes into cold storage. You have to keep horseradish cold to keep it hot. We never freeze the root. So these underground coolers that we have hold about 2 million pounds of horseradish per cooler. We've got two of them. So it's about 4 million pounds. And it will stay in there at 100% humidity. There's a sprinkler system in there because we want to keep that bulk of the horseradish and keep it nice and crispy. And it's stored in there between 35 and 38 degrees. So we, again, never freeze it, but we never try to keep it above 40 degrees either. And it'll sit in the cooler until we're ready to send it back through our system to go through a cleaning process and an inspection process. It goes through X-ray. It goes through magnets, trying to catch anything that may have come in from the field. One for consumer safety, but also for our equipment. When we're grinding it, we don't want to send anything through that might wreck our grinding equipment or our bottling equipment up here. And obviously, don't want any foreign material in the finished good either. So we'll rotate the two coolers twice a year. So we'll have that fall harvest, load up the cooler, and then we're grinding it all winter long. Our big peak time for horseradish is usually the holiday season, so November for Thanksgiving, and then you've got Christmas, and then you've got New Year's, and then you've got Passover. So kind of all those months are really the prime time for horseradish and horseradish grinding. And then we come back in the spring. Usually our coolers are pretty bare, by that time, and hopefully we have enough to get us through until the spring harvest, in March, April, or May, and then we'll fill it back up again. Same process. Grind it all summer. It stays in the cold storage until we're ready for the fall harvest again.
Okay, so let's dive into your markets a little bit more. Is your product just sold domestically, or do you do any export?
We do a little bit of export. In the past, we've shipped our product to South Africa. They used it for kind of a pharmaceutical purpose. There's something called horseradish peroxidase that they were extracting. We sold finished goods to Japan, to Europe. We've shipped a little bit to Canada, but I'd say 98% of our business is domestic U.S. market. We are the leader, the number one brand in retail horseradish. So that would be in supermarkets, and we're in just about every supermarket in the U.S. So wherever it is that you shop in Madison, we definitely have our products there on the shelf, and then into the Walmarts, into Target, into Publix, you name it. We're making it. And it's either under one of our brands that we own and acquired ourselves, or we'll do quite a bit of private label business. So sometimes the retail customer will want their own brand. So it can be our formula with their label on it. And in other cases that we will develop a recipe or utilize someone's recipe for a big food company and do a co-pack for them. And then they'll be able to sell it. Cocktail sauce comes to mind. We do quite a bit of those. And then they'll bring them to market themselves. Another segment of our business is industrial. So we're pretty large in the industrial sector. And think about a 400-pound drum of horseradish or a 35-pound pail of horseradish. And those are sold to big food companies that are utilizing horseradish as a raw material, raw ingredient in one of their sauces or formulas. So those guys are generally using it for cocktail sauce. They're mixing it into salad dressing. We sell to some quite a few Bloody Mary companies that are utilizing it in a Bloody Mary mix. Pub cheese. There's some cheese companies that will do a horseradish pub cheese. So a variety of different applications on the industrial side. And then we do a little bit of food service as well. So we'll make gallons of horseradish or quarts of horseradish, and that will be served to restaurants and restaurant distributors or cruise ships if they're doing like a cocktail sauce bar, all you can eat shrimp, something like that. We do quite a bit of that. So retail, food service, and industrial, kind of the main segments of our market in the U.S. Probably our strongest item, number one seller, is our regular prepared Silver Spring horseradish. It's sold in every Walmart in the U.S. Retail size, 8-ounce glass jar, refrigerated section. We'll sell that generally to the dairy buyer. As I said, you have to keep horseradish cold to keep it hot. So we partnered with dairy distributors, or we'll go into the dairy department to keep it in a cold place in the grocery store. So it's in cold channel all the way through its life, from the harvest and the cold storage. We'll grind it, we'll bottle it, we'll put it in the refrigerator. It'll ship out on a refrigerated truck, and it'll live in a refrigerated shelf before the consumer gets it. And then the consumer is going to be able to use prepared horseradish in a variety of different ways. The main uses for horseradish are going to be, prime rib or Bloody Marys, or to make sauces like cocktail sauce. But then a lot of people like to mix it, have fun with it, mix it with mashed potatoes, mix it with applesauce, make a salad dressing out of it, add a little bit to a soup or a stew to give it a little pop. So people can use it as a condiment, or they can use it as an ingredient. And we have this core demographic for horseradish. We actually did a study 10 years ago trying to figure out, who is the horseradish consumer. And the study told us it was mainly 55 years and older. So we did the same study 10 years later, and pretty similar result. They were just now 65 years and older. So same group, they're just 10 years older. So one of our challenges as a company is, how do we engage a younger audience? How do we engage millennials and make something like horseradish exciting again? And so we've gotten into some events marketing. We were the official horseradish of Lambeau, served wherever Bloody Marys were served, trying to get into the tailgating scene and the brunch scene. Utilizing social media is a great way to engage a younger audience. Influencers, so people that can get a hold of our product and use it and show different recipes, different ways to use it, and just bring some awareness to this great product, because it packs a lot of punch. There's a lot of heat and flavor without the sugar or cholesterol or fat. So among condiments, it's one of the best that you can use, and it's certainly kind of like a thrill ride. It gives you that heat, like a roller coaster, and then it dissipates. So it's quite a bit different than some of the other heats that are out there.
That's a really interesting study, and I wonder why that is. Do you have any ideas?
I think, yeah, as we get older, our taste buds become a little desensitized. So I think horseradish with this strong kick is more interesting as a way to bring excitement and flavor to food, and that's really our mission and purpose as a condiments company, is to make food taste better, not the same or worse. So we like to say, give it zing with Silver Spring. So that's one reason. And I think it's just an awareness of kind of how you can use it or incorporate horseradish in a variety of different ways. So, with more kind of cooking expertise, I think as we get older, we develop more skills and can incorporate more ingredients like horseradish into our meal to give it a little more interest and excitement.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, you mentioned that there are other producers of horseradish out there and horseradish products. I'm wondering how you set yourself apart from competitors. Like what makes your product unique and better than the others? What kind of strategies are you using?
Yeah, great question. I think it starts with having a great quality product. With being vertically integrated in horseradish, it allows us to control the quality and really understand what's going on with the root itself, and deliver a consistent product. Some of our competitors do a blend with horseradish and parsnips, and we do 100% horseradish. So actually the name Silver Spring was used to really connote that purity of the product. There is a spring on the site of our farm operation called the Silver Spring, and where it was Huntsinger Farms is the farming operation. Silver Spring Foods is the brand and the manufacturing company. And I think when Ellis launched his brand of horseradish, he wanted to connote that purity, that he's using 100% horseradish in his product versus kind of a root blend. Another thing that we've done recently is I was really curious about the chemistry of horseradish. What goes on with the root itself, and why is one root hotter than the next, and those flavor dynamics that we talked about earlier. So we commissioned a study to look at the chemistry of horseradish and really understand what was going on with the heat. And what we discovered is the horseradish itself isn't hot when you put it in your mouth, but as soon as you start chewing on the root, or in our case, grinding it, it releases this enzymatic reaction. There's something called glucosinolates stored in the roots themselves. And this activity on the root cells will convert that into something called allylisothiocyanate. It's a mouthful, but that's essentially the compound that goes up into your nose and makes your eyes water. The more of that's there, the more tears that come to your eye, the more peppy it is. And so we were able to really dig into this and study it. And there is a way to measure different peppers. So there's Scoville units that measure, the difference between a jalapeno and a habanero, and how many Scoville units is one versus the other, and what's the consumer experience going to be. So we endeavored to make our own heat index for horseradish through this study. And so we can measure different roots, we can measure different finished goods. We have a method, we developed a method to determine the difference in heat and how much zing there is. And we launched our own heat index for horseradish, and we called it the zing factor, which is totally novel to our category. No one else has a zing factor, but we have the research to back it up. And we are just putting it on the packaging now. And we have a variety of different products that we've brought to market in the horseradish space that hit different segments for consumers, whether you like a little more mild zing. That's a zing factor of 1. And that would be like our cranberry horseradish. It's only about 12% horseradish in there. So I like to call that beginner horseradish. And then you can graduate, and work your way up to a zing factor of 5. That's our hottest product. And that really will bring a tear to your eye. So something like that, I think, gives us a differentiating point in the market. The purity, as I mentioned, in this process of understanding the heat dynamics of horseradish, one of the challenges the industry faces is this heat loss over time. So what we were able to do is graph that heat loss. So the day that we make it, it has a certain level of heat. And then what does it look like in a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months at the end of its shelf life? And how much heat loss did we have? Is there a way we can flatten that curve so that the consumer has a more consistent experience with our product from the beginning to the end of its shelf life? So through some processing techniques, through some trials and tribulations, and this method of being able to measure and taste, we've been able to flatten that curve and have less loss, a flatter curve. So from the beginning to the end of the product shelf life is more consistent. And therefore consumers can trust our brand more as they're buying it. And when we're talking to commercial customers, we understand the heat dynamics of the product, and we can create a product for them that meets their zing factor preference. What is it that they want their product to do, and what do they want that to do over time? So I think that's created a differentiating point for us that gives us a nice competitive advantage in the long haul.
Hmm. I love that name, Zing Factor. I think that's really catchy. So you said you mix it with cranberries, and I thought I read on your website that some of your products contain dairy, and that somehow, I don't know, improves the flavor. I think those flavor combinations with other iconic Wisconsin ingredients are really cool.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to our cream style horseradish. And that was an invention, a discovery, really, in the early days by my grandfather and great grandfather, almost by accident. So they spilled, I think the story goes, they spilled some Wisconsin dairy cream into the prepared horseradish. Somehow, maybe it was coffee creamer, whatever it is that they were using, it got into the product. They put it into the refrigerator, forgot about it for a month or two, saw it there again, pulled it out, and it was as white as could be, which is a characteristic that consumers are looking for. It'll get darker as it ages. So it stayed whiter longer than their regular product. And then they tried it and they discovered that, oh my gosh, this has its heat. It didn't lose its heat. So they invented cream style horseradish at the time by mixing Wisconsin cream with the prepared horseradish. And there is, and they didn't know it. We have the research now as to understand why it worked, but they, just empirically, oh, wow, this is hotter longer. They added another a month of shelf life, which allowed them then to expand our market into markets outside of Wisconsin, and really helped us become more of a national brand and move into more markets outside of our region. Now we know why. It's this allyl isothiocyanate with this compound that makes horseradish hot reacts with water in a way that breaks it down. So we generate all this heat. It's the plant's defense mechanism. Is telling you, don't eat me. It's releasing all this stuff. But as we mix it into the prepared horseradish with water, it's reacting with the water and it's breaking down. So what the oil and the cream does, or the fat, is it coats this compound and it doesn't let it react with the water and break down. So it's kind of preserved in there until you're ready to put it on your prime rib. Cranberry horseradish is a product that was invented on our dinner table. Again, growing up in the horseradish industry, we have horseradish on the table all the time. So you can imagine at Thanksgiving time with our family, we have a fresh horseradish on the plate, and then we make our own cranberry sauce. And well, the two then kind of sometimes commingle when they're on the plate, and we're like, "Wow, this is amazing with the turkey. Let's commercialize it. Let's bring it to market and see how it goes." And it's still one of our family favorites to date. I like to put it over a block of cream cheese around the holidays. It's very bright and vibrant, and serve it with crackers. Recently, I've been mixing it with cottage cheese and serving it with Ruffles potato chips as a nice snack. But it gets a little bit of that earthy horseradish heat, and then kind of the tart, sweet cranberry with the cheese is kind of a Wisconsin match made in heaven.
That's great. Okay, so getting back to your markets, I'm curious how the market for your products has trended in the last few years. How did COVID affect it? You mentioned that you had some supply issues a few years ago because of the weather. How has demand for your product been?
Demand absolutely exploded for our products, all of our products that we make here during the COVID times. We stayed open, food manufacturing, supermarkets stayed open as people had to stay home and restaurants closed. That was our primary market was retail. So everybody's cooking 3 meals a day at home and going to the grocery store, and there was more of a need for all retail food products. We had 30, 40, 50, 60% growth for horseradish and mustards and different things. One of the reasons I think for that is if you're having the same meal all the time, how do you make it interesting and different? And that's really where we can come in. If you're having the same turkey sandwich every day, here's a nice way to bring some excitement and flavor to that kind of standard sandwich. And more people are looking at health. Horseradish and mustards are very healthy for you. So I think that was another factor that helped us. And we're coming off of some of those peaks now as more things have opened up and more restaurants have opened up. But as the economy is turned and people are being more price conscious, there's a role for us to play there. If you're buying a cheaper cut of meat, you can use horseradish to tenderize it or to add flavor to it. There's a use for our condiments that are fairly inexpensive to be able to add flavor to a variety of different proteins. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, as we wrap up here, I just want to ask one final question, and that is, what's the future of Silver Springs look like? Where do you see opportunities and challenges in the next few years?
Yeah, great question. I would say for me coming into this role, I'm the first family member who's taken over as president since my mother had it in 1973. We've had outside management, so it's been great for me to have this opportunity. It's pretty rare to get to the fourth generation and over 90 years, and really focusing on that quality and service. So my goal for the company is really to leave it in better shape for the next generation than when I found it. I talk about my four pillars, my four ways that I plan to do that. And number one, I want to be a great place to work for employees, really focusing on culture. We launched our Huntsinger Way, which is a series of 30 fundamentals that talk about the behaviors that are critical to our success, giving employees opportunities for growth and development. Number two is solve problems for customers, big, little. That's the essence of any business, really. But we got to keep focused on that because our customers are what keep us in business. Number three is make a difference. That's one of our fundamentals, but it's one of my pillars too. The more successful we are, the more we can give back and kind of weave our brand into the fabric of the community, and allows us to host Wisconsin Farm Technology Days. Was to say yes to that. It was a big economic impact, a great thing for the agricultural industry, and a chance for me to meet other producers in our area, like Chippewa Valley Bean and Superior Fresh and Gouda and Ferguson's Orchard. Just amazing specialty crops here. And then last but not least, make the world a tastier place. No roast beef sandwich left behind. So our mission is really to make food taste better. And so everything we make, I hold up through that prism to make sure that we're adding flavor and not just making a bland product. So if we do those four things well, I think we'll be around for another 90 years. We have our eye on sustainability as well. We've had more customers asking about the energy that we're using, our carbon footprint. We've just gone through our Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon footprinting exercise for the factory. I think it's inherent in being a family business and being able to make longer term decisions, generational decisions. So investments now that are good in 5 to 10 years allowed us to invest in a solar array that generates about 18% of the energy we use on the farm to keep the horseradish cold. The rotation for the horseradish, it's an eye of being a good steward of the land, preventing erosion, cover cropping. What can we do to use, less fertilizers, fewer passes? We just invested in new farming facilities in the center of our fields so we can be more efficient. We have a wash water retention pond. We use a lot of water when we're washing the horseradish before it comes up to the factory. So what can we do to preserve some of that? We built this huge water retention to save that water and then pump that back out into the field for irrigation. So I think that's going to help us continue to be successful.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate you making the time to talk to me. And I'm really excited to pick up a bottle of horseradish at my nearest supermarket. I don't know if I'll go for a zing factor of 5, but I do like some heat, so maybe a 3 or 4. But thanks again, and just wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. We do have strong roots in Wisconsin here, and give it zing with Silver Spring.
Brought to you by the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension.